Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are shrinking down, way down, into a world that used to be pure science fiction. But, well, it's quickly becoming science fact. We're talking about nanotechnology, the incredible science of engineering impossibly small machines that are literally set to change everything.
Now, that isn't a line from the latest blockbuster movie. Nope, that's a real quote about the very real world of nanomedicine. A world where scientists are designing microscopic robots to hunt down diseases inside our very own bodies. This is where our journey starts today, right at that wild intersection of biology and robotics. So what is nanotechnology really? You know, when you boil it all down, it's the ability to build things on the scale of individual atoms and molecules. And here's the crazy part. When you work that small, the basic rules of physics, they can change. This lets us create materials and machines with abilities that we've just never seen before. It's kind of like someone just handed us a whole new fundamental set of Legos for building our world.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll try to get our heads around the mind-bending scale of this nano-revolution. Then, we're going to see how these tiny robots are already changing medicine. After that, we'll pop the hood and see how they actually work. And finally, we'll look ahead and explore what our nanotech future might hold. Ready? Okay, let's dive right into the big question. Just how small are we talking when we say nano? Honestly, the scale is almost impossible for our brains to really grasp, so let's try a little thought experiment to put it in perspective. Okay, picture a meter stick. You got it? Now, in your mind, divide it by 1,000. That little sliver is a millimeter. Not bad. Now take that millimeter and divide it by another 1,000. You're now at a micrometer. That's about the size of a single bacterium. Now for the last jump, divide that by 1,000 one more time. You have just arrived at a single nanometer, a billionth of a meter. We are now talking about the size of a virus. That is the playground for nanotechnology. And you know what? You've actually already used nanotechnology today. Yeah, the processor in your phone or your computer, it's built on this exact scale. But, and this is a big but, those CPUs are static. The atoms are just fixed in place to shuttle electrons around. The real revolution, the one we're here to talk about, is creating dynamic nanobots, actual machines designed to move, to act, and to interact with the world all on their own. And nowhere is that revolution more exciting or more mind-blowing than in medicine. We're talking about a whole new generation of treatments that are more precise, way less invasive, and more effective than anything we have today. It's about to turn our own bodies into the next great frontier of exploration. Check this out. This is incredible, and this is not a theory. This isn't a what if. Back in 2018, researchers actually did this. They used something called DNA origami to build these tiny, self-assembling barrels. They loaded them with cancer-fighting drugs, stuck a sensor on the outside that could sniff out tumors, and injected them into mice and pigs. The little barrels homed in on the cancer cells, and then, with a simple external signal, zap, they opened up, released the drug, and shut down the cancer cells from the inside out. I mean, come on. That's the future of medicine, and it's happening right now. And it's not just for cancer. The potential in something like neurosurgery is just immense. See, the brain is protected by this thing called the blood-brain barrier, which makes it incredibly hard to treat. But we're now designing nanoparticles that can slip right past that barrier to deliver drugs exactly where they need to go. They can even be used to light up the edges of a tumor so a surgeon knows exactly where to cut. Or they can form tiny scaffolds to help regenerate brain tissue after an injury. This is truly transformative stuff. Okay, so this all sounds amazing, almost like magic. But how do these things actually work, right? How do you build a robot you can't even see? And how on earth does it know where to go once it's inside a person? Well, the answer is this fascinating mix of biology and artificial intelligence. First thing, just forget the image of a tiny metal machine with a microchip. The reality is much cooler and way more organic. Meet the Xenobot. It's not really a machine in the way we think of one. It's more like a new kind of organism. It was designed by an AI and then built from the stem cells of a frog. Seriously. Skin cells give it structure, and heart muscle cells act like tiny motors, contracting to make it move. And because it's made of living tissue, it's completely biodegradable. It's a living robot. So how do they navigate? I mean, there's no GPS in your bloodstream. Instead, researchers use artificial intelligence, specifically a technique called reinforcement learning. Think of it like training a dog with treats. They put the nanobot in a simulation, and its goal is to follow the scent of cancer cells, which release these chemical signals called biomarkers. The AI learns to follow that trail, getting a little virtual reward every time it gets closer, until it can navigate a super complex environment to find its target.
And this graph just shows you perfectly how it works. It's a perfect inverse relationship. You see the blue line dropping? That's the nanobot getting closer to the cancer cell. And as it does, look at the red line. The concentration of those biomarkers it's sensing just shoots up. It is literally learning to follow the scent, always moving toward a stronger signal. So the key here is, the AI isn't just programmed with a map, it actually learns how to hunt.
So we've seen the what and the how. Now let's zoom out and look at the big picture, the future. Because the promise here is enormous. But like with any tool this powerful, it raises some really profound questions that we need to start talking about right now. First off, let's be clear, this isn't some niche project hidden in a university lab. Nanorobotics is a massive and rapidly growing market. And just look at where the money is going. A full 45% is in nanomedicine, with another 30% in general biomedical stuff. That's 3/4 of the entire market, all focused on health. The momentum is undeniable.
And that momentum is just picking up speed. The market is projected to grow at a compound rate of 18% a year all the way through 2031. I mean, that kind of sustained, explosive growth tells you this is a technology that is moving out of the lab and into the real world fast. The money and the science are all pushing in the same direction.
But this incredible speed forces us to face some pretty serious questions. As one group of ethicists so perfectly put it, with this much power at our fingertips, we have to ask, what are the borders? How far is it actually wise for us to go? And this gives us a great way to think about those challenges. Let's start with equity. Who's going to get these amazing treatments? Will it just be for the rich? What about privacy? When cameras and microphones can become so small, they're literally invisible. Then you have security. Who's going to regulate nanoweapons? And what about the environment? What happens when we release these new materials into the wild? And finally, the really big one, the metaphysical question. If nanobots can enhance our bodies and our minds, at what point do we stop being, well, human?
And that right there, that's really the ultimate question we're left with, isn't it? We are on the edge of a technology that can repair ourselves, maybe even expand our minds, and could one day reproduce all on its own. It completely blurs the line between what's alive and what's created. The future is filled with unbelievable promise, for sure, but it's going to demand our wisdom and our foresight. So the real question is, what kind of future will we choose to build?